I am so nervous right now. But then again, if I weren't nervous, I wouldn't be making this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 0 of The Box Cutter, a podcast dedicated to breaking down every episode of Disney's Out of the Box and seeing if it still holds up at the end. My name is Daniel, and I will be the host for this podcast. So, this podcast is all about the Disney show Out of the Box that ran from 1998 to 2004, starring Tony James and Vivian Bayou-Bay McLaughlin. Every episode, I've invited friends and family to watch an episode of Out of the Box, available on Disney Plus, and having a discussion with them. Some of them have seen the show before, and some of them haven't, so this will be some interesting perspective of nostalgia versus seeing it with a brand new pair of eyes. We'll be judging each episode based on the episode's theme, the acting, the music, the arts and crafts, and the story time, judging whether or not the episode holds up or if it falls apart. So this podcast is a pure passion project. I just adore the show. I've loved the show since I was little, from being 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old watching it. This episode is more or less a prologue and an introduction to who I am. My name is Daniel. I live in California, and I am currently studying human resources. I work in education, and I have been working in education for about almost 5 years now. My favorite color is green and orange. I like to sew. I love to dance. I love to make things with my hands. I feel that I have to credit Out of the Box being one of many major influences for my creativity. I don't remember exactly when I first started to watch it. I must have been around 4 years old. I remember it being a time of lots of yelling from my mom and dad, lots of stomping of my feet because of what they'd say to me. It hurt my feelings, lots of my brother and sister picking on me. And it turned me into this shy, scaredy cat. But I do remember finding an escape through watching TV. There was such a comfort. I remember watching shows like PB&J Otter, Bear in the Big Blue House, Roly Poly Oly, and of course Out of the Box. And Out of the Box just stuck with me. Out of all the other shows, it's just the one that I made sure never to miss. It was my time away from everything, to be away from the world, to escape. And the reason I feel that that show stuck with me, and it still holds a very special place in my heart, is because of the two hosts, Tony and Vivian. Tony and Vivian made the show what it was. They made it genuine. They made it so inviting, so positive, something that I really felt that I lacked when I was younger. That's why it's fueled me to make this podcast. Just hearing them invite me along to sing along and to follow along with their crafts and sit down and listen to their stories. Episodes would be themed around many different things, like seeds, to the beach, to even tubes and cardboard boxes. Tony and Vivian, along with the cast of kids that would be featured every episode, would help us explore our imaginations and look at things in many different ways. Just the mention of the name Out of the Box really makes you think about that theme song. That theme song is just, it's such a perfect encapsulation of the 90s. The percussion, the bass, it hits hard. Obviously, there were many talented and passionate people working behind that show, not just Tony and Vivian. There's one line that Tony sings that really gets the point across of how great and how involved and inviting this show is. He said, "There's music in our hands." Listening to it now that I'm older, very brilliant. Just hearing Tony say, there's music in our hands, it makes kids think that they don't have to pay for lessons to be musicians. You know, they can make sounds and rhythms with their hands and anything around the house. I can think of many instances there's a problem and I might not have the right tools, but looking at something gives me ideas of how I can fix it. It really helps to just develop all these different perspectives, not just look at things one way, not just look at something and just see it for what it's worth, not just look at this and say, oh, it's just a paper tube. It can be many things. It can be a telescope, it could be a rain stick, it could be finger puppets. And I really appreciate Tony and Vivian and everyone that worked on this show just being an influence on me. So, that's my relationship in a nutshell with this show. Alright, so to lighten the mood and bring it back to the podcast, let's go ahead and do a warm-up and break down the intro to Out of the Box.
It's music time!
Alright, so right away we get this really awesome, like jazzy sort of saxophone type of riff going. And we see two kids, Nicholas and Alicia, walking down the street with Tony right behind them. And I just want to say, great attention to detail. As an educator, you always want to have like line of sight, number one, do or die rule. And I really appreciate them having Tony stand behind the kids versus in front of them, so that way you can keep an eye on them. So they're walking down the street, and in the first second, we get a ton of boxes in the middle of the street. Either someone moved or someone's moving. I really don't know. Someone probably bought that fancy IKEA stuff. I really don't know. Alicia and Nicholas, the two kids that Tony's walking with, kind of signal to Tony like that they want to look at the boxes. Like they're waving their hand over. I'm not sure if that's a good idea, only because we don't know how long those boxes have been out there. You know, it could be like infested with like creatures like raccoons. I know they got raccoons over in like the East Coast, New York, where this takes place. This is in New York, but it must be a fancy part of New York because they got houses. They're not like in the inner city. They are out there in the suburbs. For the longest time, I thought it was like in Oregon or like Washington or California. But they really think it's a good idea to take all these boxes. And then we get these two other girls, Jill and Cece, coming out of the bushes, like seeing what all the commotion is about. Like they come out of the bushes like in the most 90s way possible. and then we see somehow they get like a wagon, like a radio flyer. And they're able to get all these boxes strapped down onto it. First off, where did they get the wagon from? That wagon was probably from one of their backyards when their parents weren't home. I do not know. But where did they get the string to like tie it all down? It's weird enough that there's all these boxes tumbling over in the middle of the street. No one knows where they came from. And they think it's a good idea to take all of them, not being cautious. But even then, like, you know, skunks and raccoons, you know, things have rabies. Where did they get the string from? Like, seriously, where did they get the string to tie all of this down? It's just amazing how they were able to get all these boxes, not only on a wagon, but strapped down. And then we have Vivian watching two of the kids. One of them is drawing, another one is just standing there doing nothing. They are Dane and Brandon. Dane's the one sketching. Brandon is the one just standing still. I have a few opinions of Brandon that I will get to later on throughout the series. But in this instance, you get a little taste of Brandon and who he is. So everyone is excited. And Brandon's just standing there. He's just cracking a smile. He ain't like jumping up and down. He's not excited. But what's also interesting is that Vivian is somehow okay with taking all these random boxes from the middle of the street. Like Vivian, I'm not sure what like canonically in the show she does besides take care of children, but there is no way as like a child care provider she makes that much money to be able to afford a house in New York in the suburbs. She's probably renting with Tony. I really don't know. But unless it's her parents' house, I really don't know. But even then, there's got to be more than one person living in that house in the suburbs of New York. Fancy. It's so nice. But there's got to be more than one person, and they probably were not okay with that. I do not care how much time, how many days it took. That clubhouse is just, it's way too perfect. And I'm not doubting the kids. You know, if they were that disciplined to do it, they could do it. But they're like 7, 8, 9 years old. And I work very closely with 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And even then, it's kind of a little hard to fathom that it's possible for them to make a clubhouse. I'm pretty sure Tony and Vivian just pushed them aside and told them, here, color this, color this. But it's such a lavish, just so beautiful. It's like, you know, it's if IKEA came out with the clubhouse, this is how it'd look, and it's so gorgeous on the outside. And the homeboy Brandon, you know, Brandon that I just talked about. Brandon, you know, I don't know what he did. Maybe he was on lunch break or something, but he wasn't in one of the shots when they were all together. They were showing everyone together, having a good time. Brandon was not there. Everybody else was there, but Brandon. Maybe they were just like, go, go, go. He's not here. Do it, do it. But, you know, he's not there for some odd reason. And then in the next shot, when they're all done with this beautifully gorgeous clubhouse that they made, he's somehow there. And then, here's the really weird part. When they get inside, it's somehow fully furnished and decked out. They just made this clubhouse. And I know imagination and all that. I have an imagination like everybody else in this world. But even then, fully furnished with a slide, with a wooden jungle gym corner, with, you know, cushions and tables and air conditioning probably. It's interesting. It's really interesting. They built this clubhouse, maybe it seems to be in a day. They were able to build it in one afternoon. Where are they getting the furniture from? That's my question. Where did they get the furniture? Where did they get the tables? Where did they get the air conditioning? I know it's a kids show, a show for kids, but, you know, I still love it. And, you know, I still have questions. And maybe because I'm an adult, you know, kids don't ask questions. They just do what they're told. Do as you told. You know, looking at it again, it's just so weird because, you know, Vivian has this beautiful house in the suburbs of New York. And then you have this gorgeous clubhouse, and then it's fully furnished. Either Vivian is really rich or she is famous in the universe of Out of the Box. I really don't know. But anyways, so what's interesting is that when they go inside and it's all fully furnished and decked out, Brandon isn't in the clubhouse. He somehow magically transformed into another kid named Matt. I don't know if there was a filming conflict. I don't know if there was casting got Matt and then they later got Brandon too. I really don't know. But it's just like, it's so weird. It's very weird. Like that Brandon's not there, but Matt's there. It raises eyebrows. So they're inside the clubhouse and everyone is so awestruck. And Vivian tells the biggest lie ever. She said that pictures come to life. I don't know about everybody else, but imagining a picture coming to life is just, I'd be terrified. I would be so scared. Even now, like just thinking about it, I am just so, being a little kid, you know, I was such a scaredy cat about a lot of things. And hearing her say that pictures come to life, I was always like, I was very suspicious about it. I was like, I don't know. I really would rather not. And then I get my favorite line from the intro, which is Tony saying there's music in our hands and pots and pans. And then you see Tony going ham and playing these pots and pans, this rack of pots and pans so brilliantly. I don't even have to hear him say it. He is such an immaculate percussionist. He is so, he's so good. Did you know he was in the original production of Stomp? And he was also on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when Mr. Rogers went to go talk about Stomp. I feel that the last 10 seconds or so really encapsulate what Out of the Box is. You know, kids singing and doing arts and crafts and dressing up and doing stories and all that. And then you see in the last shot, you see everybody but homeboy Brandon playing in the box. I have a lot to say about him because I was rooting for him. We were all rooting for him. Overall, I'd say that the intro is everything that a kid in the 90s imagines when they see a bunch of boxes and they make a box for it. But it's also really high energy, and it's like, it still hits, it's still fire. The song slaps. I still feel like the intro, it definitely holds up, no question about it. Even with all the craziness, even with Brandon turning into Matt, this still holds up. It's so good. So, the way I just broke this intro down, it's kind of like how I'm going to break down an episode of Out of the Box. I'm going to note things, I'm going to talk about how, I'm going to summarize it, I'm going to note some things that I see, regardless of if an episode holds up or not. My judgment isn't the last say. There are things I like, there are things I don't like. But those might be things that you like. So I can say that this random episode from season 1 is one of the top 10 episodes. And you check it out and you don't think so. And that's okay. So before I go, I just want to remind everyone that this is a passion project of mine. This is something that just came to me. I just love the show so much. It's something that I can talk about for hours and hours because it just means so much to me. I hope you come along on this podcast journey of mine and, share with me what you have to say in the comments. Send me emails about what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see, because it takes a village to grow something. So, in the words of Tony and Vivian, so long, farewell, until we meet again.